Hello and welcome to NFT Decree. I'm Barry, and I know I've not uploaded anything in a couple of weeks, but just took a bit of time off. This isn't a job, right? Do what I want. Very easy to get burned out on making videos like these if you force yourself to do it every day. So a couple of weeks off, but in that time we've obviously had a balance patch update, and although it's it's been out for a week or so now, I suppose I better go over what's been changed. Now, this is only the first part of the overall balance patch. More things will be implemented, but they fixed a couple of the critical issues, not all of them, and there's still more to come, right? So this isn't the definitive balanced version as things stand yet. Now, the change notes are slightly lacking. There is some. They did make some notes, right? But it's not obvious at a glance what's changed all the time. If there's cost change or stat change, that's obvious. But some of the abilities have changed, and there's no real log of that. So if I miss anything here, let me know. But otherwise, I'm just going to highlight some of the cards that have changed. And once the balance patch is fully done, I'll need to go through it and rank the cards again, because the ones I did at the start, from a point of inexperience, from a point of just having started the game, and these are the cards that seemed strong to me. But let's go through them, and as I said, if I miss any, then let me know in the comments, and I'll just write it up there as well. So the first change is to Bloodlust. Now, Bloodlust was a card that I thought was terrible. Previously, it would randomly give a creature +1 or -1, and it only cost 1 at that time. But now it's had a cost increase, but you can choose what to do, whether that's give all creatures +1/+1 or give all creatures -1/-1. You could probably make that more succinct: give all creatures +1/+1 or -1/-1. So this is at least it's not great, right? It's very weak to have much of an impact. If you were, I think this might have a place in an Ancestral Guard deck. If you can wipe the enemy's board, and then you can play this to give your creatures +1/+1, they get no benefit, then this is a possibility. The -1/-1, it doesn't kill a lot, right? But it could just be what you need to get over the edge. Again, in an Ancestral Guard deck, maybe when you're on 6 mana, you can do Fire Spirit, do 2 to everything, and then play this and -1 to everything as well. So it's better, right? It's better. It's still not particularly strong, but it's not the trash tier it was. There could be something that's built around this in the future. So then let's see, what else do we have? So I'm obviously looking at the old cost here, because there should be a Bobcat somewhere. So Bobcat is now has a stat buff. It was a 1/1/1 with spell immune. Now it's a 1/2/1, and that's fine. That makes it. It fits. It's not great again, but in a beast deck, you want a 1-drop. Suddenly, it's just that little bit better. Like 2 lets you take out a liquidator. You play this turn 1, and it's got a function that it can take out a liquidator if that's what they drop. So, I'll come back to talking a little bit about the early game, because the early game's changed with Owlbears being more expensive now. But the two attacks, just worth it. Like the spell immune on its own wasn't that useful for early on. And now it does a little something, yep. Cool, right, let's see what else. The Young Blood is now 0 cost, right, so that was a 1/1/1 native, but obviously to bring it in line with the Young Recruit, the native tag wasn't enough to make it worth that 1. I know once you've got your totem built up, then suddenly this can be pretty decent. It could be a 0 cost 3/3 with stealth or guardian or something. But it just had to be useful outside of that. If you're spending all your time building up your totem, then you should be getting the benefits from it. So again, whether or not this will see any play direct, debatable. And Apprentice is the other 0 cost unit, and it splits its 1/1 across the turns, right? Doesn't do anything on yours. So this is all pretty balanced along the bottom here, as far as I'm concerned. The native tag and the ghost tag at the moment aren't so strong that these are like auto includes for a lot of things, but it does start opening up the archetypes. Starts opening up a little bit for the natives, and hopefully some more things get done with ghosts in the future. Right, what's next? Speaking of Ghosts of Gettysburg. A 2/2/2, it was a 2/1/1, and increased spell damage by 1. So again, just a little stat buff, just bring it in line with some of the other cards that we're looking at. It doesn't change the game by any stretch, but it does make it a little more viable as an option. Again, playing this can maybe take out a Liquidator, or you can just hit that little bit harder to make it worthwhile, or you could just survive against a 0 cost unit, right? So the young blood or whatever. It's fine. It's what it is. Right, what else have we got in neutrals? We should have the Skinwalker, I think it's been updated. If I can find you for 3. So slight stat buff. Its attack's gone up again. Destroy a friendly creature to gain +2/+2. So, I mean, if you're thinking about how the game was resolving previously, high health units were the order of the day type thing, particularly to survive Ancestral Guard's board wipes. But there's got to be other ways of dealing with boards than sort of spells, and buffing things strength can be quite important. So even though this still isn't great, it's a 3 for a 5/4 after destroying something else, and whether that's a free young blood or not depends on kind of what deck you've gone for. But if that was a 2 cards for a 3 cost 5/4, it's not brilliant, but this is okay-ish. What it really needs to sing is something that triggers on last words, so a decent last word for natives that would make it something that you wanted to kill, or something your opponent wouldn't want to kill, but something that you did want to kill. Would be what it'd take to make that one sing. Then we have so Cemetery Angel. I don't think still in the game yet, so they didn't add any of the cards that aren't already in the game. But Cemetery Angel had its text changed there. Then Navajo Witch for 4. Oh, there it was. So Navajo Witch was a 3/2. So just balanced it out. So with all these other creatures getting a slightly stronger health buff, attack buff, this is a slight health buff. Not enough to be, again, meta changing, but just enough to bring it in line so it's quite strong. I mean, the Guardian ability was already quite good, but this is now a decent creature. Like its stats are balanced for what you're paying for it. Then we had so Sacred Spear was 5 cost, and now it's a 4 cost. Why aren't these alphabetical? So weird. So Sacred Spear was a 5 cost for a +3/+0 and Inspire. Now typically you're only getting that off once before your opponent kills it, right? So paying 5 for a single Inspire and +3 for a turn wasn't worth it. Bringing the cost down to 4, a little better, but it's still, it's just a little bit more to help the native faction, or the native trait, which came out as its sort of own release, and hasn't been as strong as it could have been. So these are all just slight buffs to it, and as the game progresses and as more cards have the native tag and more support for natives, this could be worth a punt, right? For those. So Broodmother should be the next one. That's a 6 cost. Did I just pass it? So Broodmother, deploy, add 2 Spiderlings to your hand, 6 cost, still the same. It was a 4/4. So this has had a buff. Like, you still have to pay for the Spiderlings, which cost 2. So this is like a draw 2 very specific cards that you then still have to pay for and are quite weak. So this has just made her a slightly bigger body. Again, as things have gone up in their attack, you need to just balance that out with the mid-range cards still having the same utility. Now I do have a cup of tea here, so you'll get my ASMR tea drinking for that one. Right then, Ozark Heller. Now let's have a think. That should have gone down in cost. Here, so this was a card you've probably never seen, right? I put it in one deck once, but didn't do much. So the spell buff deck isn't really a thing yet, but in the future could be. But this just brings these costs and these stats more in line. It was a 6 cost 4/6 with increased spell damage, but increased spell damage isn't enough to justify losing 2 points of attack. So this has been, again, just balanced here. So you find it's like a common. That's what they've kind of gone through and done. They've just kind of balanced the stats a little more, made some of the underpowered abilities, the stats reflect closer to what you're paying for, and then if you can abuse the ability, then you've had to have done well in your deck building. Puckwudgies. One Puckwudgie. So this was what was it? It was a 5/6. It was just a little bit too tough. So the card draw in this one, and the cost reduction if you built your deck right, and the fact that this is searchable with. What is this searchable with? Searchable with one of the spells, isn't it? So that's something I've never really covered, but the ability to tutor for a card, so tutoring's when you can go and search your deck for a particular card, is actually quite powerful. So this being a 6/5/6, this ability is stronger than, say, the Ozark Howler, and so that's why its stats are reduced, or its health was reduced. Plus there was a few too many cards at 6 health, and it was difficult to deal with a board of them, particularly when they gave you some other kind of board advantage like this. Then let's see, we should have the Wendigo. Where's the Wendigo? What cost is that? Should be 6 here. So this was a 6 cost, and it was a 6/5/5 with target enemy loses fortify. Again, I played this once, but it's a situational card, and it's not such a strong ability that you should be sacrificing stats. So just for sort of reference, like when you're paying for something, like the cost should be equal to the combined stats, or the combined stats should be equal to twice the cost plus 1 or 2, depending, for like a raw card, right? But this has abilities then modify those stats a little bit, and you can't just totally design by spreadsheet, but you can try and justify what the costs of a card are. And this wasn't a super strong ability. Now, sometimes getting around Fortify can be a game winner, but not often enough that you're going to start putting this into your main deck. Now, if there was side decking, then maybe Wendigo would be a good tech card. But anyway, effectively it's just been reduced in cost and might be worth playing sometimes. So Houndmaster, that's an expensive card, 7 here. This was a 4/5, but everything else was the same, and now it's a 5/5. You're hopefully going to be able to maximise the ability on the card there, but just in case your board's been wiped, you get this card as a top deck when you've nothing on board. Just makes it marginally more useful having the attack. So none of these meta warping by any stretch. So the Nagual, or Nagual, don't know how you say it, Jaguar, Nagual, has stat buffs again, same thing. So 7 costs 5/5 instead of 7 costs 4/4, and all natives in your hand cost 1 less. I mean, this is more, I've spoken before that your cost reducers should be cost reducers, Mish Moneypenny. Cost reducers should be... they shouldn't come this late in the game. They shouldn't come sort of turn 7 to reduce the cost of creatures in your hand, because at this point, I don't think you've got any natives that cost more than 7, so this is the most expensive card, the most expensive native, and it's the one that's your cost reducer. But with vampires, the game might slow down a little bit, and if you can keep this on the board, then it might be a bit better. So the stat buff to keep it on board might see some play. Again, it just helps strengthen the whole native archetype a little bit, but not enough for everybody to switch over to being on natives. Then Vulture, it's a 7 coster, right? Seen that yet? So that was had its cost reduced. Same thing, because it buffs off other things or other beasts dying. You need it down sooner than turn 7, because by the time turn 7 comes around, Ancestral Guard's got Van Meter Monster or Tornado online, and they could just wipe out all your creatures before you get a chance to play this. And that said, this would still, if you played this and then they played Tornado, this would still die because the buff wouldn't happen until it was already on its way to the graveyard. So this is fine. Like 7 was just too much. Like it was impossible to get out and get played. It's still not great, but it's better. Then Forest Ghost. It was a 8 cost 4/4 that summoned 2 wolves. Now it's an 8 cost 5/5. Again, I think this would be better if it summoned something else, but at the moment that's fine, right? That is what it is. It's not doing much for the ghost archetype. The deploy ability doesn't do anything for that, but it is. It's 8 for 9/9 effectively, spread across 3 bodies. Now sometimes that's not what you want. If your opponent's got the board wipes, you don't want weak. You don't want multiple weak creatures because it doesn't make any difference. But you'd have to know what your deck is, and you'd have to know what's going on to put this into a deck. So again, maybe if ghosts become something in the future and this did a different deploy, this might go somewhere, but I still don't see it having any effect as things stand. Then the Furious Yeti has gone from an 8/6/7 with Onslaught to an 8/8/8. So this is probably the most buffed card there's been, right? So there's 2 reasons that this kind of needed the buff, and the problem is, this and this is now strictly worse than this. This should be a 7/7/7 Onslaught. There's no reason for this to be an 8/8/8 and this to be a 7/5/5. Like if this was a 6/5/5, the ability to play it earlier, yeah, okay, you can kind of see it. But this is, it's hard to say it's strictly better, but it is strictly better, right? So, but this is now somewhat playable, right? This is a raw stats, fine. Onslaught itself can do something, and 8's enough to really push through on, do some damage into the enemy hero. So this is worth having a look at if you've got if you find the games are going a bit longer. This is something that's worth considering for your decks in the future. So this is the first card we've seen that's potentially meta warping. It's not really meta warping, but you might see some more of it. Then Owlbear. So Owlbear was how much did Owlbear used to cost? 8. So its cost gone up by 2. It still counts itself on deploy as things stand, but hopefully that will be adapted in the future. But that extra 2 turns off before it can come down, so now it can't come down turn 2 regardless of kind of what you do. At best it can come down turn, can you get it down turn 3? Let's see, you got 4, draw, so you'd have 7 in hand. Yeah, so now you could get it turn 3, so it's not as much of a what's what I'm after, as much of a nerf as it might seem. As player 2 you could still get this down turn 3, and as player 1 you could get it down turn 4, but it's just enough. It just changes that early meta game, and that's something that we need to think about going into deck building in the future. Like, what does that meta game now look like? Previously it was don't play anything, Liquidator, if you're player 1, or Owlbear if you're player 2. And then just try and kind of, batter off both of them. These smaller cards that have had their strength increased, that goes a little bit of way of being able to add items to them to take out the Owlbear as well. So it does just change the changes the meta a little bit, early game in particular, and should change deck building a little bit. So this is, Owlbears are still worth playing, but they're not quite as devastating as they previously were. And if we look at the last card that was changed, I think it's all the way down here now. This was 8 cost, and now it's 5 cost. Like, it's still not being played, but we had a look at a few things that had the native trait and they'd been buffed. This would just keep things in check if it goes too much in the other direction, right? Makes some sense. Okay, so that's all the neutral cards that have been changed as far as I know. Let's have a look at the different factions. So if we go into Crusaders, let me just have a look at my notes here. Clicky clicky. I need to get a silent mouse. Right, first thing that's been changed and got a buff is the Cursed Whip. So this was 5 cost, it's now 4 cost. Does the exact same thing. But 4 cost for a +4, and the oboes, it comes out earlier, which is good. Sometimes you need some early oboes to do a couple of things. And sometimes, the reduction in cost means you can play multiple things. So you could bank, if you turn 8, you could bank Rubber, you could put the Cursed Whip on it, you could swing for 7, and then you could put this back in hand with the oboes it gives you. Obviously you'd lose the Cursed Whip. But that is just, it's pure buff, and it just does a little something for Crusaders items. It's not massive, but it does make the Cursed Whip a little more functional, and can help a little with the Frenzy archetype for that one. And I think that's the only thing that was changed in Crusaders. So then we have the Rangers. Chip and Dale. Rescue Rangers. What was changed in here? So Bartender is probably the first one, right? So Bartender has gone from a 4/4 to a 3/4. It's still a 4/3. Still 3 costs. Still, generates the random beveraginos at the end of the round. But it is now much more. It's a little bit squishier. You got to work a little bit harder to protect it, but it still does really good things in Crusaders. Still definitely worth playing, but it is a little weaker. Now, it could be argued that Rangers didn't need any nerfs, right? They're already struggling, but they should see some future buffs as well, right? Then Sleeve Gun. Sleeve Gun was always an item I didn't want to play because it didn't really do much. But now Sleeve Guns are a pretty decent include for Rangers. So it gives a creature +1/+1, but also deals 2 damage to a random enemy. Now this is important in the early game because turn 2 they play. So turn 1 you play Barrow. Turn 1 for them, whatever, nothing, right? Turn 2 for you, maybe you get the Duelist down or something, but they play the Liquidator, which only has 2 health. Turn 3, you no longer need to sacrifice something. You could play the Sleeve Gun, and it would deal 2 damage to. Actually, I wonder if that's 2 damage to a random enemy. It's not enemy creature, is it? That should be enemy creature, probably. Well, I guess you're 50-50 then on playing this, so I'll have to try it, see if it always hits a creature or not. But it was just underplayed before, so going from dealing 1 damage to dealing 2 damage is a big deal. Like, it is a big deal for that 3 cost item. So it is now worth considering, although Axe Gun still typically outshines it, right? If you're playing this, you can still take out the Liquidator, and then you've got an 8/3 creature, or like a 7/2 creature for your opponent to deal with. But that's an option. Then the Town Drunk has gone from Town Drunk's been nerfed, even though it wasn't seeing a lot of play. So it was a 4 cost 4/2, and now it's a 5 cost 4/2. How bizarre. You know what? Please hold. Because that is, like, of everything that I suggested, like, I can see where they've taken some inspiration. But this one, what did I what did I say about that? That they could possibly have thought that was a good idea. Rangers, Town Drunk. Yeah, I don't know. I do not know why this was nerfed. Like, this did not seem like a problem card to me, and this is not something that I have suggested. So, I mean, not that, you know, everything's at my suggestion, but this is just a weird one. Nobody was complaining about this card. The stats aren't worth talking about, and it only comes out in deploy. Like, Bartender is strictly better than this by quite some way. So I don't know why they managed to nerf that. So this is now worse. Cannon. So we've nerfed Cannon as well. Same cost, 5/5/5. But instead of dealing 5 damage to 2 random enemy creatures, it now deals 3 damage to 2 enemy creatures. Now this needs some support. If it's certainly that stat line was too strong, right? 5 for a 5/5 dealing 10 damage on deploy was bonkers, but it was really the only thing supporting Rangers in terms of being able to win. So this needs a lot more support now that has to come in some of these other balance updates in order for this to work. So hopefully that is coming, and this was just a stat line balance for the short term, but they're going to bring it up in line to the other parts that are needed to support the cannon. Then the Doctor is gone from so it's the same cost, 6 cost for 4 he was before, and now he's a 4/5. So a little bit, I mean, arguably still underpowered, but this heal ability could be quite strong, and particularly useful in the vampire meta coming up, I think, where cards can stay alive a little longer. So we'll see if this makes an impact anywhere. And then the Gatling team, so this has been buffed, so this is the only sort of buff out of Resolute Rangers. It was a 6/5/6, now it's a 6/6/6. And just gives you some benefit when your creatures die still. So, I mean, this is still powerful, and the buff, you know, should definitely be throwing this into Rangers decks, but I hadn't looked at that before, because nobody plays Town Drunk anyway. But it's so weird that they've chosen to nerf a card that has no redeeming features. Right, onto Destructive Horde. Not a huge amount of changes here. I think some of the bigger creatures may have got a little something. 5. So the Charge Zombie, which isn't in the game yet, and the Wicked Paladin, which isn't in the game yet. So nothing been changed in here as far as I'm aware. Deal 2. This is a little stronger, right? The Skeleton Archer. That seems like it wasn't. I'm looking at the... I've only been looking at the Exodus cards. What an umpty. Okay, we're going to have to go back through and have a look at a few other things, but that's okay. And then finally, Ancestral Guard. Like I say, the patch notes were not... They were not in any way the way patch notes should be put out, but let's not worry about it. So, Tornado... well, Tornado had gone from a 4 to a 7, but that had already happened, because that was wild when it was still a 4 cost. The Flying Head has gone from a 4/6 to a 4/5. Let me look at that again. I mean, that, because this wasn't exactly setting the world on fire here, right? Was it? Flying head. Oh, so it was a 3-7, and now it's a 4-5. Is that right? Flying head, flying head, flying head. So it says here it was a 4-6, but I do think it might have been a... Yes, it was a 4-6. And I said it should be a 3-7, and then you get the advantage of it staying alive and being tougher if they manage to kill your other things. But okay, so this has been nerfed when it should have been at least balanced around the buff. I get like the +3, 5 for a 7-5 is above the curve, but the requirement of not having any other creatures, and as soon as you play another creature, you lose that buff. This shouldn't have. It's not seen enough play. It's not meta defining. Shouldn't have been nerfed quite the same way. Parasites is cheaper. Stormbringers cheaper. Cool. Right. So now I'm going to have to go back through all the standard cards because I was only looking at Exodus. So we'll see if there's any cultists that have had anything done to them as well. So cultists, we have... Oh yeah, of course, because definitely some changes here. So cultists obviously looking to be the strongest deck left over after balancing things properly, so if you don't include them. So this was a 2-cost 3-2 that gave all other friendly cultists +1/+1. Now it's a 2/2. Again, this is still a strong card, but it's a little bit more reasonable now. Fury Rider, which is the 3-cost, sorry. This guy, your other cultists had +3/+0, but now it's far more reasonable, +2/+0. No, was it +2/+0 before? Yeah, it was a 3/3 before. So this is on its own. It's not doing much. Was it +3/+0? No, it must have been +2/+0. I must be dreaming. Then the Treasurer, which was pretty strong for 4, if we can find them. Where is the Treasurer? Treasurer. Yeah. So he was... he gave all other cultists +2/+2, and that's just come down to +1/+1, because this was bonkers. By the time turn 5, if you managed to keep your cultists alive, this was kind of a game ender at that point. So definitely still worth it, but just reined cultists in a little bit. And Dark Priest, which is here, this was a 4/4, which it still is, but at the end of the turn deal 1 damage instead of 2 damage, and then add them to your hit points. So that's going up by 1 every turn instead of going up by 2 every turn, because this was a 4-cost, immediately doing 2 damage, 4/6, and it would always just kind of tick up from there. So it was a 4-cost 6/6 turn 1, and from there just kept getting stronger. So this was brought back in line again. So cultists are pretty much unchanged. They just don't quite have the same explosive power as they once did, or they kind of did with the buffs. So let me now... This video is much longer than I thought it would be. We'll go back to neutrals and have a look. So Chupacabras, little change. Rusty Guns, not in the game yet. Deathseeker's not in the game yet. Peasant. So Peasant is in the game. Got to be here somewhere, right? How much does he cost? 2? This little guy. So he was a 1/2, and now he's a 1/3. Just an opportunity to keep him alive a little bit. Because he's stealth when he comes in, he cannot... you can't equip him until he's at least swung once. So having 3 health just keeps him alive a little bit in that earlier game. He's not a great card, but he can maybe do a little something. Plus that 3 health keeps him out of range of a fire spirit, say, if that was kind of what your opponent was relying on to wipe your board. So yeah, okay, it's something. Not amazing. Then Ironclad. So this was This was a 1/4, now it's a 1/5. So still same 4 cost, spell immune, fortify, 1/5. Yeah, it just keeps it alive a little longer. What you probably, if you're playing this, you're probably just trying to stall for a little bit, so having more health makes sense. And as I said, going into the vampire meta, just having more health kind of makes sense anyway, if the game is going to go a little longer. So then we've got Smuggler, which I don't think's in the game yet, so don't have to worry about that. Headless Horseman. Now, Headless Horseman was the most useless ghost in the game. It was a 4 cost 3/3. At least now it's a 4 cost 4/4, right? So if the ghost traits start getting something, then maybe this can be a bit better. At the moment, pure vanilla, and if anything, just a little underpowered. So nobody's going to be playing that. Then Drowned Woman. She's 3 cost right here. Gone from a 4 cost to a 3 cost. Destroy target creatures' items. Vampires again are going to put out some more items, and some are going to be they'll be meta defining. So having this as a tech card might make more sense, and making it cost 3 also makes a bit more sense, just because a lot of times this will be blank when you want to play it. Then, Granny got a buff. Where is Granny? Granny now costs 3 instead of 4, which is mental. Again, I gotta have a look. Like, what did I refuse to believe I suggested that Granny should have a buff, but who knows? Maybe I did. Granny. No, I specifically said can't reduce this to 3 cost, too abusable. So we'll see how much that comes to pass. This coming out for cheaper is just crazy, right? I mean, Granny is somebody's going to break the game using Granny and deploy effects. So when it happens, don't say you weren't warned. And if nothing else, I've not helped with one of the the Gorgon cowgirl girl. But this is nuts. This can go in. There's so many things you can do now with Granny that you can just play in the same turn as putting out. Like just being able to play something, pick it back up in the same turn. Even though they've nerfed cannon, getting that online turn 8 is instead of turn 9 for safeties is crazy. But anyway, it's what it is. See how that works. Plague Doctor. This ability wasn't particularly good. It was a 4 cost, 2/3. Fatal strikes don't work. Reduced that to 3 cost. Yes, I mean that's fine. I mean the ability could be decent, but it's still a bit situational. Like if anything, this could be a 3/3 with fatal strikes don't work. But the 3 cost, again, that just changes the early meta with the Liquidators, or if you're not playing Liquidators, maybe the whatever's the other Spiderlings. It can just turn off your opponent what they thought they had a good defense, but when it was 4, it just came out a turn too slow, right? So this is now an option for that sort of rock, paper, scissors opening. Then the Sphinx, which I'm pretty sure nobody's ever meaningfully played here. So this was a 4/2, so 5 cost 4/2, but just having 2 is just a little too risky with fire spirits. You play this, they fire spirit. Sure, you want it to die because you get the last word, but you also want to get an attack off with it before it does so. So having just that 1 extra health, not going to make it a top tier card, but it is going to make it slightly more functional. Then Swamp Witch. So this still hasn't had the full range of changes to it, because if you recall, Spectral Warrior, Swamp Witch and Widow were all identical apart from the stats were super weird. So this is still 5 cost for a 6/4 is strictly better than a 5 cost for a 4/4 and even a 5 cost for a 4/3. But this is at least goes some way to actually no, I mean it's still stupid, right? If you're not going to give it a different ability, or maybe some sort of tag, like if you give it a native tag or something. Oh no, this is native, so maybe give this a I don't know what the Swamp Witch is, ghost tag. It's not a ghost though, is it? I don't know, but basically both of these are still far less playable than Widow for the same cost. So, Widow's probably overstated for what she should be. Again, I'm going to have to have a quick look at what I put in there. So Widow's the generic big mute. Did I say anything for Swamp Witch? Yes, much cheaper. So, I gave her a native tag, and there was a 2-cost 1/2. Again, just for that early game. To compete a little bit with Fanatics. Slightly cheaper. You get that mute off again for the rock, paper, scissors opening. But instead they've chosen to buff it. Alright, fine. Fine, can't win them all. What is next? Buffalo. You can look that up. You can Google that. That's a real thing. What is Buffalo now? So Buffalo was a 5-cost 3/5. What is it now? Now it is... Where is Buffalo? Oh, 4-cost. Okay, so it's had a... this is actually pretty decent now. Pretty good in beasts as well. 4-cost 3/5 with Fortify. It just survives. Like, you drop this turn 4, it gives you a turn. You're working towards getting that vulture down, maybe you're working towards getting something else down. Losing... the stats are pretty fine. Losing one point of attack for Fortify is pretty good still. So this is worth... worth playing. Just sneezed, but luckily muted in time, so you didn't have to hear it. Right, the Ghosts of Mariachi. This was a 6-cost 1/6, which was pretty grim. Now it's a 3/6. Still not brilliant in comparison to something, say, like Treasurer still. But this is much more... It's a little bit more workable. Like, having 3 attacks is something. Ghosts still aren't a top-tier archetype, but we could get somewhere with it. And Banjo Man, on the other hand, has had its cost reduced to here. Again, another ghost, 4/4/4, and you get the +2 on something else. But because it's situational, like I say, if this was just a raw, if this was the vanilla on the stat line, it'd be something like 4/5/4. But the conditional effect making it a 4/6/4, right? So you're getting the 2 on another creature. But the fact you have to have that other creature makes it situational. Yeah, this is fine, and hopefully, ghosts start getting more and more stuff coming up. Fire Demon, that was a card. Fire Demon was a 6-cost 4/5, and now it's a 6-cost 5/6. Because this hits you as well, you have to set up your deck and your board state to make the most of it. So the stats should be more in line with because this is detrimental as well, unless you've worked towards it. So this just makes the stat line a bit better. So this is something that you should almost if you can build for it, then you can definitely put this into something. Like, you could Fire Demon into what was that card? Fire Demon into Bloodlust or something for -2 to everything. But again, you're going to have to build your deck around that. But that option's there, right? And this is a decent enough body now that kind of adds a little more options. Mustang Sally. Doom. This was a 7-cost 2/6 that rooted something, which was useless. Now it's a 7-cost 6/6. Another ghost tag. Ghosts are getting a little bit of a boost here. But they're still missing a level of cohesion, a level of sort of synergy that really kind of pushed that deck over the top. Then Grizzly Bears changed, but that's not in the game for that one. So let's go into Crusaders. How long is this? 45 minutes already. Oh well. One more time, right? So what has changed? Gambler. Now the Gambler was what was it before? Oh, it was a 3/3. So it was a 4-cost 3/3 with a 50-50 chance of working. Now it's a 4/4/4 with a 50-50 chance of working. So this is just slightly better, right? Playing 4 for a 4/4 and taking the odds. Very fitting for the card. Obviously sad when it doesn't work, but getting 2 oboes off it for free isn't bad. Then Witch Hunters. Yeah, so Witch Hunters in game. So this was a 5/4/4, and as we've discussed with the Plague Doctor, this is very situational. Like last word's not triggering, but this is a reasonable body still with a sort of tech utility, so that could be okay. Then Vengeful Soul. This was what was this? So the notes say that this has gone to 3 cost, but it hasn't. So this is not changed, as far as I can tell. Gunslinger has gone from an 8 cost to a 7 cost, and it's had a slight buff to its health. So this was an 8 cost 4/6, and that was a 7 cost 4/7. Can't argue with that. It just enables board wipes to turn earlier, but you still have to work towards building it up. So theoretically, 4 cost should be spot removal, get rid of any creature type cost, give or take. Might require some setting up. And 8 should probably be the generic board wipe type range. But with Ban Meter Monster and Tornado out of AG coming down turn 7, you need something comparable for the other factions. So this coming down to 7 cost is a pretty reasonable choice, if you ask me. Then into Rangers. So what else has happened here? So Duelist, yeah, I think, did I mention this or did I not notice this? So this was a 2/2/2, and there was no point in playing this because it's got no traits. You'd always play the Brave out of neutral, strictly better than it, like a 2/3/2, but now they've got their own 2/3/2, and so this is just fine. This is fine thematically, right? And if there was any cost reducers in the future, this is the one that you play. Then the Undertaker's had a buff because this was a 3/2/3, but now stats brought up in line. Getting a shovel's still not great, but does what it does. Trappers had its stats boosted. This was a 4/2/5, and that was 4/3/5. Still gets +2 against beasts, so if the beast meta gets out of hand, because we have seen some boosts to boost the beasts. So this being slightly better is worth it. Then Zombie Train has been buffed. It was a 4/08. It was a 4/06, and now it's a 4/08. And that, 8 does a lot. 8's enough to stay alive. This plus your Barricade, it does pretty well at staying alive. And sometimes you just want to stall. And as the archetype for Rangers maybe progresses, where you're wanting to put these on the front line with something like Mayor, or giving them Fortify or something along those lines, and being able to bounce your cannons or move your cannons around with Granny and that, having that extra health could well help. And Barricade as well has that changed? Yeah, this was 5 cost. So again, 4 cost. It's just cheaper. It just gets it down sooner. You can't win the game with this, because I suppose you could if you put an item on it. It's not immobile, or permanently rooted, I should say. But it just feels a bit better playing this turn 4. You're just stalling. You're just trying to get whatever you're looking for in your hand, whether that is your. You maybe even Burning Coats on something like Barricade could be quite strong. And then Mayor, let's see Mayor. So this was a 5/6, and now it's a 6/6. So that brings it up. And Burning Coats has gone from 8 cost to 7 cost. So again, what I was saying with Tornado being a board wipe and now Gunslinger being a board wipe, now Burning Coats could be a board wipe as long as you've got sort of the Butcher down. So, it's tricky because you'd have to play this turn 7 and this turn 8. So unless we get some sort of cost reducer and this gets a trait like, worker or something, and reduce the cost of all workers by 1. You play this turn 6, you play this turn 7, and then you've got your board wipe. But that'd be much stronger than the other factions' board wipes from the point of view. Your final swing with this would be something like, 12 into the opponent enemy as well. But anyway, that's not possible. Those reducers don't exist. But this coming down in cost is not insignificant. Theoretically, this should probably come down in cost as well, right? I mean, it's only giving you +7 with an extra hit. Yeah, this is probably a bit overcosted as well. Right, what's next? Destructive Horde. Into there. Let me just sort this. So sorry that we had to bounce back and forward and go through everything twice, but like I said, the patch notes aren't in one place. They're on this sort of Google Doc that has multiple tabs, so it seems. So that is where Skeleton Archer was. So this was a 2-3 and now it's a 3-3. I think covered that. Bear Rider. Bear Rider's pretty bad because it was a 6 cost 4-5 that did 2 damage to you, and now it's a 5 cost 4-5 that does 2 damage to you. There's not enough ways for the destructive type deck, the self-harm deck, get banned on YouTube for saying that, you can capitalise on that. So you've only really got the witch. What is the witch called? Was it the cult witch? What's her name? Dire Witch. So you've only really got her that when you take damage you get a person. So you'd have to play this before playing the Bear Rider. So there needs to be some more support for the self-damaging archetype to come in, because this deals 1 damage to you, this deals 4 damage to you. Zombies, anything else deal 1 damage to you? I can't remember. But there needs to be some support for that as an archetype, and more synergy there. Then Mother of Death, that was a 6/4/4. And this ability didn't work. I don't know if this ability works still, but now it's a 6/6/6, and the ability, if you're sacrificing a skeleton for 3 health, that's maybe worth it. But a 6 for a 4/4, and that ability wasn't strong enough. Still no traits, still not like undead traded or anything, so no synergies there. Dead Army, this was an 8 cost to fill your table, so this is kind of the opposite of the board wipe. This is a board filler for that cost, and that's interesting to me. And this was 10, right? This was a 10 cost Cannoneer, and it just, it's just not worth it. You'd never play it. But it's 7 cost for a 4/10. This is far more interesting, so this is something you can probably think about working into your decks now if you're playing Undead or Destructive Horde. Then finally, try and get this under an hour. There have been, there's no other changes to Ancestral Guard, so that is fine. We can leave that as is. Sweet. So that is all the updates. Like I say, there's only a handful of cards that are really meta changing. This could be interesting. Have to see how that kind of works out with the new vampires cards coming out, and there's some other things that are worth trying. Vulture's worth trying. Granny's broken. You should really find some way of abusing Granny, but there's been a little bit more support for beasts. There's been a little bit more support for ghosts, a little bit more support for natives. Rangers have been hit the hardest, even though they weren't sort of the top faction. And most other things are relatively similar, although there's now a few more options. So get out there, get some deck building done, and get some games played. So how do I wrap these up usually? Oh yeah, of course, if you've not played the game, download it, use the link below, you get a free pack of cards to use in game. As we get closer and closer to the launch of the game, you're going to start needing cards, so definitely do that. And check it out. So until next time, this is NFT Decree signing off.